to tell you all a ghost story. It has become somewhat of a fable in West Virginia. It is said to be the first known one in the United States, that is documented anyways. This story reminds me of another known haunting in history, the Bell Witch. It has the same type poltergeist that torments a family, but this time in West Virginia, many years earlier. If you thought the Bell Witch gave you the chills, wait until you hear this one. It was around 1794 in the late evening in the southern part of Jefferson County, West Virginia, in a little village named Middleway, that the events took place, dubbing it the Wizard Clip at the time. The Livingston family had gotten themselves all warm and cozy for the evening. It was a cold and rainy night, and the sky felt even darker in the small, secluded area. The family were all sitting around the fire to keep warm as they were having supper when they heard 3 loud bangs on their door. They were all startled and puzzled. Who could it be at such a late hour? Carefully, the father, Adam Livingston, went to the door and opened it. There stood a man in well-worn clothes, unshaven, a look of exhaustion and soaked to the bone. In an Irish accent, he spoke to Adam, telling him he had gotten lost and was simply looking for somewhere to stay for the night. He hadn't been forewarned of the sudden storm and wasn't prepared for it. Adam Livingston was known to be a kind and generous man and welcomed the stranger into his home. Little did he know what horror that his kindness was about to release, not only on himself, but on his family. The stranger entered the Livingstons' home, where Mary, Adam's wife, with the help of their children, made up a bed for the night's guest. They gave him some dry clothes and let him warm himself by the fire, as he was given a plate of food to eat. The stranger seemed very polite and appreciative, but was clearly exhausted and noticeably quiet. The stranger kindly excused himself to a sleeping area for the night. Mary had mentioned to Adam that the stranger didn't look well. Adam assured her that he would be fine after a good night of rest, but he was wrong. The family was awoken in the night to sounds of horse coughing. Adam quickly knocked on the stranger's door before entering to check on his guest. He found the stranger sitting on his bed in a very much worse state than earlier. The stranger knew he was dying. No doctor was close by, being so far secluded, and even if there was, the stranger didn't believe that they could be of any help to him. The stranger knew he was beyond a doctor's help. He requested a Catholic priest. And being of Lutheran religion, it was out of the question, even if there was one close by. Times were different in 1907. In his neck of the woods, Catholic priests were not thought well of. And yet, the stranger continued to beg for a priest, but not for long. Just after midnight, as Adam stood at his bedside, the stranger took his last breath. Now, there are many different versions to this story, being passed down orally for generations, and later, of course, multiple written accounts. I'm going by this book, which is called The Appalachian Legend of the Wizard Clip, America's First Poltergeist, the Catholic's version. In this version that I'm going to tell you, the strange occurrences begin pretty much immediately, the stranger leaving him and his family and community cursed. Adam was said to employ a man named Jacob Foster to sit with the corpse through the night. Foster began immediately to light candles around the chamber, preparing to stand vigil over the stranger's dead body. But almost immediately, the candles blew out, leaving Foster in pure darkness. He relit the candles several times, with each time the candles flickered, then quickly dimmed before suddenly burning out. After several attempts, Adam brought out new candles, lighting them outside the room with no problem, but as soon as he was close to the stranger's corpse, the candles extinguished. It's not clear if it was the candle incident or something more, but Foster soon became so terrified of being near the corpse that he left, refusing to return to his vigil. The following morning, Adam buried the stranger's body in unconsecrated ground on his land. That night, Adam found himself wakened multiple times to the sounds of horse galloping. Each time looking out the window and seeing nothing, the sounds would stop and he would return to bed, only for it to happen again. But what was most puzzling is that after some time it became apparent that the sounds weren't coming from outside, but from inside the walls. The following evening, something happened that couldn't be so easily pushed aside. Hot coals started to shoot from the family's fireplace throughout the evening as they sat around it. They were repeatedly forced to put out small fires that began erupting throughout their home after each onslaught. Eventually, the family was forced to go without a fire at all. They were forced to sit in the freezing cold of their home so the house didn't potentially burn to the ground. And this wasn't a one-time ordeal. It was repeatedly happening, making the family having to get used to bundling up to stay warm rather than face burning the house down with them in it. However, this method didn't appear to be entirely foolproof in combating the fires. On many occasions, different members of the family would retreat to their bedrooms for the evening, only to find their bed engulfed in flames. The family would run around in fear, putting the fire out each time. The nocturnal sounds became a regular presence too. More frequent than the sound of the horses was the banging. Late at night, loud knocks would be heard on the home's door. When Adam investigated, he would find no one there. The knocks then escalated throughout the house, most commonly from inside the walls of the house, with no source to what was doing it. The banging would keep the family awake, sleep-deprived, and terrified about what was attacking and tormenting them. The activity was not just for the night, and the many sounds were soon identified when the family now were claiming to see furniture move across the room, slam into walls, and sometimes move into their original spots. Dishes flew off the shelves, crashing to the floors, making the children scream in fear. Not only was the haunting going on inside the house, it was also tormenting drivers on the road along the family's property. Neighbors would bang on their door, wanting to know why the family had set up a rope across the road that was blocking their carriages from getting by. The Livingstons had no idea why the rope was there. They would take it down just for it to appear back again the next day. Close neighbors were witness to many happenings that the family had to endure. Laundry would disappear that was put outside to dry, only to appear weeks later on bushes neatly folded. The village, soon hearing about recent hauntings, gave the incident its nickname of Cliptown. The family would hear the sounds of shears opening and shutting, and finding no source yet again. They soon noticed what was happening, small crescent moon-like shapes being cut into fabric items around their house, in clothing and tablecloths. The haunting was gaining fame throughout the village. Visitors began to flock to Middleway to see the phenomenon. Many reported taking handkerchiefs out of their pockets to discover them cut up. Many in the village complained about stuff of theirs being cut up when they were near the property, driving down the road. While others who visited the family tried to hide hats or other items and went to pull them out while leaving, but they were cut when they took them out of their pockets. One night, a group of young men brought their dates to the property to show them they were brave. While dancing, they heard the snip sounds, only to find one of the young men's bare butt showing. All the laughing aside, there was a dark side to the clippings when it came to the animals on the property. One day, while Mary was in the garden with friends, watching a family of ducks waddle through, when they heard the familiar sounds of shears clipping. And right before their eyes, the ducks were savagely decapitated. Sadly, after this traumatic happening, the family were no longer able to keep any birds on the property. Learning this by getting new birds, only for it to happen again. I myself would be so traumatized by it happening the first time, there's no way that I could, let alone get more birds or even stay after seeing that. Of course, in those times, you just couldn't afford to just get up and go. Anyhow, that explains the clip element of the nickname. The wizard part comes from what was responsible for the phenomena. Depending on what side in religion that you sit on would depend on that. The Catholics in the area believed that ghosts or maybe demons were responsible for the incidents, while the Protestants, however, believed witchcraft, aka wizardry, was the cause. The Livingstons were on the side of it being a witch. A lot of incidents in those days were donned, "It's a witch." Nowadays, we know it's poltergeist. The hauntings took a drastic turn for the worst when, one night, the fires returned, and this time, their barn catching fire, killing all the livestock inside. Adam finally realized that he needed some outside help, and it was more than just clippings of fabric and making people laugh. Adam reached out to several priests asking for help. His Lutheran priest told him that he didn't have the power to expel a demon. Many turned him away, claiming it was a case of the paranormal or someone just messing with the family. And mental health wasn't known about in those days, and so it was definitely more blamed on witchery or ignored. And this must have been very frustrating for the family. To be turned away or not believed, even though animals were dead and his family was in great danger and horrified. Times have changed. We know now in these times that when people say they're being haunted and tell of these accounts, we definitely know that it's probably a poltergeist. Adam soon turned to an Episcopalian minister and Scottish immigrant named Reverend Alexander Bulmain. Reverend Bulmain actually did attempt the exorcism of the home, even though it was a total failure, with the spirit reportedly taking his Bible and throwing it into a chamber pot. After this, several Lutheran pastors did come and try to help, only to be chased away by rocks and bricks being thrown at them from an invisible force. Adam soon had no choice but to turn to another option for help. He was desperate, as any good dad would be, and attempted to work with folk magic practitioners. Although this option was not successful either. Many believed he was turned away from the magic practitioners, though he was given tools to perform a ritual, only for the ghost to throw them all once again into the family's chamber pot. This poltergeist was quite savage, I might say. Definitely a worse case that I've heard of so far, far surpassing the Bell Witch haunting as well. And many of the known hauntings that have happened throughout the decades that we famously know, this poor family, I can't imagine, must have been really scary. But there are many retellings, like I said before, and the events may go different depending on who tells it. This is the Catholic version, which is a different point of view as the Protestant or the secular versions. Something happened that affected the family's religion and beliefs. This story definitely has a lot to do with religion and community beliefs. After all the family went through and many failed attempts of help, Adam had a strange dream. He dreamt of a man in robes. The man and his clothing were very unfamiliar to Adam, the man saying to him, "This is the man to bring you relief." After telling the Catholic neighbors about the dream, they convinced him that this was in fact a Catholic priest that was there in the dream to help him. This convinced him to finally invite a Catholic priest into his home after all. Funny how life events can make a big impact on our lives, for sure. A Father Cahill soon visited the home, full of skepticism that he could help with the reputation of the past help. He was happy to try, though. An uncanny thing happened, though. A small bag of money that had vanished from one of the Livingston's trunks some time ago was found on the floor the moment the priest crossed the threshold of the home. The priest blessed the house with holy water galore. But unfortunately, this didn't completely stop the poltergeist. Reverend Cahill was called again just a week later. But stopping the ghost for even a week gave the family hope that this priest could finally stop the hauntings for good. Sadly, though, the formerly skeptical Reverend was having second thoughts on helping the family again after seeing how scared the family was now after contacting him for the second time. The ghost was back, and with a vengeance. The Catholic Church approved an exorcism to take place in the Livingston home. It was supposed to be performed by Reverend Bradley, but he became so terrified of the activity that was taking place inside the house that he sent for Reverend Cahill to assist him. The exorcism was successful, according to the Catholic Church. But what happens next says otherwise. In a letter from Mary Livingston herself, printed in a local newspaper, she claimed that it had not been successful. She wrote that their home was still being tormented by strange activity. That's when many who were connected to the church began to blame Mary, saying she was in fact the one behind it all, playing a cruel trick on her husband for years. Not long after the exorcism, a second stranger was said to have appeared at the Livingstons' front door. He was dressed poorly and barefoot. He claimed to be on his way to visit family. At this point right here, I myself would have probably been like, not again. When offered a pair of shoes, he said he didn't need them where he was from. It was neither hot or cold. He said he was there to teach the family the way to his father. He stayed with the family for 3 days, working hard to convert them to the Catholic faith, and appeared to be successful, with the man leaving then, disappearing off into the field. Adam later referred this encounter as a visit from an angel. A few weeks later, Adam was startled by an orange glowing light in the corner of his room. He was even more startled when it began to talk. It, too, claimed to be there to teach him the ways of his new faith, saying it was once alive just like Adam, but told Adam he would not allow Adam to see what it looked like till the end of his life. In the Catholic eye, the voice is seen as a positive figure in the family's life, there to offer support and protect them. But on the outside, it didn't seem that way at all. It would bark orders at them to pray, day after day, waking them in the middle of the night to do so, even telling them that it was vital to fast for 40 days on multiple occasions. When the family grew tired of doing so, the voice began to scream in a mixture of pain and fear. It claimed to be channeling the voices of those in purgatory, and that the family's prayer were the only way to help those lost souls suffering. At times the voice would completely change, sometimes claiming to be dead relatives of the family. And it even had the power to control fire, just like the poltergeist. It at one time burning a cross onto a goatskin vest, and another time burning a handprint on a shirt right before the family's eyes. And if that wasn't enough that the Livingstons were at the mercy of this entity, it soon was starting to encounter activity in the McSherry family home as well. The McSherry family was the family that was living about 3 miles away from the Livingstons, very close neighbors that were witnesses to all of this phenomenon. Like deja vu, one night a Protestant priest knocked on the McSherry's door, seeking refuge from a storm. The McSherrys were kept awake all night by loud footsteps about the house. But strangely enough, The priest claimed to hear nothing and slept soundly all night. Shortly after the priest left, Adam was knocking on the McSherry's door. He told them that the voice had told him that God had disturbed them last night for helping a minister of the devil. Another time, Mrs. McSherry was placing her baby in its cradle when suddenly the cradle started violently rocking on its own. And the voice gave Adam a message to pass on, claiming the devil was trying to destroy the child, saying it would be his enemy one day. And sure enough, the baby grew up to become a reverend. The voice became even more cruel to the Livingstons by hiding food and turning a meaty soup into water before scolding Mary Livingston for not following the Catholic Church rules, lecturing the family on sins such as vanity, breaking mirrors if they looked into them for too long. The voice was soon said to be inflicting physical pain on the Livingstons. When one of Adam's sons refused to do his chores on the farm, his knee became inflamed instantly, making him bedridden for a whole year and a half. After that, the voice decided that he had been punished enough, and the boy was suddenly better. One day, while working out in the fields, Adam claimed that he was overcome with a pain from the soul stuck in purgatory and found doubled over in pain. On another occasion, the apparition of an arm manifested before Adam's eyes and slapped him across the face. The voice also seemed to know things, such as family members' secrets and sins, and spoke of forthcoming deaths, and oddly enough knew of events that were taking place miles away to people that they knew before the news even traveled to them. Even claiming Mary would die in her home, scaring Mary off to a friend's house when she got ill. And this worked for a couple years till Mary ended up dying in her home as the voice predicted. The story of Wizard Clip, also known as the Wizard Clip Ghost, is deeply rooted in religious themes, particularly those of the Catholic faith, as it ultimately revolves around the conversion of Adam Livingston to Catholicism and the role of Catholic priests in resolving the purported supernatural disturbances. The narrative is steeped in elements of the miraculous and the intervention of the divine, which are common in religious folklore. Now, one thing I was thinking as I was reading this story, especially at the part about hearing the voice, was mental illness, which mental illness is not explicitly mentioned or implied as a factor in the original story, but it's mentioned in the back of the book. And of course, it says that the story comes from a time when the understanding of mental health was not advanced. It just wasn't talked about. It was more, it's a witchy thing, which I said earlier. So I guess I wasn't the only one thinking mental illness. One thing that wasn't mentioned in the story, but in other stories that I have read about fasting, when a certain type of group of people do their fasting. When you fast for long amounts of time, you start to maybe hear things, or maybe that kind of really affects your mental health, which may have been part of what happened with Adam with hearing the voice. I don't know. I wasn't there. But was it something to do with the fasting? Adam Livingston's conversion to Catholic faith lasted throughout the remainder of his life, with him donating a majority of his land to the Catholic Church. He remained there on the edge of his land till his final years, which he then moved back to Pennsylvania. What happened to Adam after that is unknown. Some claim the voice remained with him for 17 years before leaving him. And in many accounts, just 5 years later, he was dead. And we will never know if the voice presented its true form to him before vanishing. I feel cheated. I want to know. But honestly, I don't think that most of this happened. I do think that there was some paranormal happenings, possibly poltergeist, put off as witchery. And we have all heard of poltergeist and what they can do. And it sounds like definitely poltergeist. And I think a lot of things was added as time has went by. This is a big thing in their community. It has turned into a folklore, legends. So whether this truly happened or not, it does make for a good, scary story, in my opinion, to tell around the campfire. What do you guys think? I think this story definitely has a bit of everything from paranormal to the urban legend to faith and religion and community. Another thing I wanted to mention is that Adam deeded 35 acres of his land to the Catholic Church and is still known today as the Priestessville. According to legend, the land was given for gratitude for exorcising the alleged demonic infestation. Another thing I wanted to mention is, according to Mrs. McCherry, the neighbor, things were going on for years before this supposed stranger came a knocking, and according to her, there wasn't ever a stranger. And she is a big piece in this, being she was only a couple miles away and witnessed stuff herself, so she has her own side of the story. I do have to say that this is now my favorite real haunting story. To me, even if it's not real, it just far surpasses the scariness of any other haunting so far that I've heard of, even the Bell Witch legend, which is now my second favorite. I really love these scary legends. Alright guys, go and buy the book. I'll link it in the description. The Appalachian Legend of the Wizard Clip. And thank you all for watching. Leave a comment, guys, if you liked what you saw. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting me. See you guys next time on Tales Told in the Dark.